What's up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong. This is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 151. As far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure we're on 151, unless we're on 150. It's one of those two. I think it's 151. We're going to call it that for this. If not, then hey, it's 150. My name is Evan Strong. Hey, I said that already, but this is 1/4 of us, okay? I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. And here on our podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. Big claim, I know, but it's not a claim. We just talk about things as they are. We all have one God. We're all on the same earth. We're all human beings, and so things are just what they are, man. And I'm not perfect at saying anything, all right? But we have a good time here. Get into deep discussions, and yeah. So this is a little Red the guitar. I think he's out of tune. Alright, let's get into this, bro. There's 4 sides to In the Image Clothing Company. One of our 4s, besides this one, is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. That would make sense to be one of the 4ths, right? A side that's the main one. So, what we do really is address the human body's natural function. The human body is about its skeletal system. It's not about the fat content that changes. It's not about the muscle mass that changes. It's about the skeletal structure of the human body on Earth, okay? The human body is just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space. There's only one way the human body could ever work, okay? There's a neutral joint to every joint. There's a neutral to its workings. There's something about me holding the guitar during these episodes. For those of you in visual plus audio, when I sit here and I just hold little Red the guitar as I just film this, I don't know, this is comfortable. I like it. So I set him down, but I just picked him back up. Yeah, he's my little Johnson JG 610R 3/4 size with nylon strings, okay? Yeah, the human body, man. There's a center line to it. The sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and our jaw, naturally stabilizing the entire body, is also in the center. The jaw's huge, dude. I don't talk about it all that often, deeper than just saying that the jaw's in the center, but the jaw stabilizes the entire body through the musculature that goes into the head. The jaw, we think of it as the lower jaw, but there's an upper jaw, essentially, and it's just the skull. But the lower jaw muscles come up to the crown of the head, they come down into the neck, they come down into the shoulders and the collarbone and the upper rib area, like the sternocleidomastoid, and I guess it doesn't really connect to the jaw, but, you know, tendons and connections from the jaw down to the shoulders, and it really does a lot. It plays into breathing, it plays into eating, it plays into speaking. You can form words without moving your jaw. You know, you can't articulate your words well if your jaw can't stay centered because, you know, like voice coaches will tell you, if you're learning to sing, you know, it's all about shaping the words that you're saying with your mouth. And that's what I mean. It's just a mechanical machine. The body, in all senses of all that it is, okay, moving across the earth. There's only one way that I could ever do that. It's God's design. We have no say. Okay. And so because of that, we keep clothing centered. Clothing needs to stay centered. Okay. Fit correct, we'll discuss in a minute. And be made of 100% natural materials. The thing is, this episode 151 is what we're calling it. If it ends up being 150, then okay. But I think it's 151 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. The title is It's Completely Different Now. Because it is. Everything that we experience as human beings than it was in the past. And we'll get into that, but I'll finish talking about each of the 4 sides of In the Image Clothing Company. But yeah, we give free modifications to allow clothing to stay centered, and, you know, you don't have to buy our stuff, dude, but In the Image Clothing Company clothing will always just, do the things that we say needs to happen to allow the body to work, because that's our key phrase. Allowing, keyword, the human body to work. You can't train it. It's just a thing that has the operations it has. It just needs to be unrestricted, okay? Like the core, for example, it always has to be activated just because that's why it's there. And a lot of people try so hard to activate their core, and then they're within clothing that's deactivating their body by just pulling it out of its only neutral positions, okay? But we do talk about eating, sleeping, standing, sitting, walking, breathing. I might have said that, but it's the most important thing, really. Breathing is the first step to being a human being. But all the things that we do just, on a rock in space with a center of gravity and universal laws that we don't have a say over. We talk about how to let the body work. Okay. But yeah, then we've got another fourth of us in the Image Clothing Company music. I have Little Red here. Okay. Right now, that's the guitar I have, and I show how to size and set up guitars to not alter our hands. The hands are essentially the shoulders, as the feet are essentially the hips. The body's extremities really come to its center as well, okay? A big thing I also don't talk about all that often is fingernails. Our fingernails need to be fully supporting the ends of our fingers. You just have natural grip strength unless you cut your fingernails too short, okay? So we talk about a lot of things, but In the Image Clothing Company music is also a place where I just place music that I make, bro, and I shred guitars, man. Don't believe me. Sounds like a doorbell. He's out of tune. But I shred guitars, man. And sometimes that happens. I just shred them, literally. I've broken many guitars. Hey, what are you gonna do? Maybe try not to. And I try. I'm trying. I'm just a human being, okay? But then we've got In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, another one of our fourths, and we specialize in purebred standard poodles. Registering dogs properly is one of the things we advocate for, and we do it because we breed purebred standard poodles, okay? The American Kennel Club is how we can register our dogs, and then we can further good bloodlines of dogs, healthy dogs, keep dogs out of shelters easier, keep dogs at their homes easier, get dogs back to their owners if they get lost, right? There's a lot of things we do to let dogs stay natural, and things in person, poodle parade events, not actual parades, but come here to the state of Utah. Hang out with us here in the United States of America. Yeah, we'll get together, man. It'll be really great. Bring your poodles of any size, purebred or mixes of poodle, to our events, okay? And we'll do a lot of things. Check out InTheImageClothingCompany.com. But we also have collars, leashes, harnesses that we will have, at least, as of today's date. It's still a will as far as not quite yet, and also not mine. It's not my will or my timing, but just stick around. Oh, that's insane because we can really get into that. Yeah, we always will do a lot with poodles, and a lot of really beneficial things for both owners of dogs and people who don't own dogs, but can benefit from what we do, show and say. And also, when we help people be better owners of dogs and just be good owners of dogs, that helps people who don't have dogs that maybe don't like dogs very much. Because then people that learn how to be a good owner, their dogs behave better, and, all that comes with that. So stick around for that, okay? Now, clothing for everybody has to sit in the same location. If you are a man or a woman, tall or short, skinny or fat, any age, any part of the earth, any time period to ever be, meaning if you're a human being, your pants have to be above your hips. So there's no restriction to your hips. Okay, the waistband of our pants has to be slightly higher in the front than the rear, just because that's how we keep our core muscles in their working position. It's not the musculature's position, but it's actually the structure of our pelvis, of our whole hip system, slightly posteriorly tucked, okay? I was thinking about this today, actually. I talk about the waist band of our pants. And I do it when I'm doing what I'm doing right now and talking about where clothing has to sit. It's not about In the Image Clothing Company. It's not if you care about clothing or fashion or if you care about what we do as a company, but it's just the human body's only mechanics. When you place something onto it to allow it to continue to work, that thing has to be in certain locations and angles. And I was thinking today about the waist band. The waist of the human body is actually above the hips. If you think about your hip bones, and then you go up, the next bones you're going to encounter on the sides of your body are your ribs, your lowest ones. There's nothing else between the bottom of your ribs and your top of your hips besides just your side, right? I mean, just flesh, musculature. That's actually your natural waist. So this is what I mean. I say the phrase, clothing is the only fix for human beings' physical problems, and it is. Okay? It's the only thing physically placed on us. And then, I also talk about, like I was just saying, there's no opinion to where clothing has to sit. There's a natural waist. When we bend to our sides, we bend there, between the bottom of the ribs and the top of the hips. You don't bend at your hips. You can't, without taking one of your other legs off the ground. Like if you have your left leg on the ground, to bend left actually at your hips, your right leg's just going to have to swing up in the air off the ground. Because our hips are connected to the ground through our legs' bone structure that doesn't bend left to right like that when they're on the ground. But the spine does. So this is what I mean. Well, I could say a bunch of phrases that I've said before. In the Image Clothing Company is and always will be huge. We speak universal truths on how to allow the human body to work. What we say applies to every single human being on the earth for literally ever, beginning and end. These things are true, and this is how, okay? Because a lot of people don't understand that you can't train the human body. A lot of people miss the point that every joint in the body has a neutral position, okay? So, in the Image Clothing Company, eternal truths. Okay, we're not perfect, but the information we give is just about God's design of the human body. We're designed in the image of Jesus Christ, our God himself. Okay, no religion to believe in, but look around and everybody is the same as you. They just don't, or even if you don't want to believe it. I mean, there's a baseline human being, and that's structured after God. We're children of God, all of us. Okay, so tops that we wear have seams on top of our shoulders. They need to sit evenly behind the peak of our shoulders. Our shoulders just only ever work behind our head. That's just where they connect mechanically. And then we have seams at the edges of our shoulders that need to just be right at the edges of our shoulders, as close as we can get to that joint, because the seam itself is a joint of material. Okay. Now, two things we have as prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company, because we wear shoes and our shoes need to fit our fit, but really what they actually need to do is fit our feet so snug, okay, without restricting the feet. The only way you can shape a rope across the top of the feet in a weave pattern, the way the human feet are shaped, is what we title In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique. Okay, found wherever you find our 5-word name as a whole, In the Image Clothing Company. And then we tie shoes as well. We tie them over toward the center line of the human being, okay, because there's two sides to the body, okay? Evenness will then occur, okay? There's rotations in the lower leg. They have to be even. There's internal and external rotation throughout things like the hips and the shoulders, okay? The whole body, really, in ways, at least from its extremities in, like that. And it just needs to be even, man, and so that's how you're going to do it, okay? And then secondly, we remove all tags from clothing. This is one of those things, okay, that will go along with this episode's title. But tags in clothing just didn't even exist decades back from today's date. At least not mass-produced as they are nowadays. So even within shoes, okay, remove all tags from clothing. I can tell you that, right, as I say sometimes. So this is a big thing. episode 151, we're calling it. Even if it is 150, it might be. Okay. If so, then the next episode we'll call 151. But I'm almost certain this is episode 151. Okay. In the Image Clothing Company podcast, the title is It's Completely Different Now. And I did that little ticky-tick clock thing both times I said the title because I keep kind of forgetting how I worded this title. And that's how I worded it. Shoot, I literally forgot it again. I was going to say it one more time. It's completely different now. And I think it's just a big thing. It's so... oh, shoot, here we go. It's so big to see, okay? The world, our lives as human beings is so different now. And I say this, we're just the same, whether it was thousands of years ago, or if it's today, or if it's thousands of years from now, if that even still is able to occur, okay? And I'll say it like this, because in Scripture, okay, the Holy Bible, the Book of Mormon, true doctrinal discussions, okay, historical records really is what they are of God himself, okay, prophetic messages, prophets speaking God's words for him, essentially. Really, God speaking through the mouths of prophets, right? Prophets, apostles, revelators, translators, people are used as vessels, okay? As a vessel is an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast's title. Now, God will speak through people, those that are willing. Willingness, an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast's title, okay? But anyway, we've got a lot of episodes so far, which I love, and we're laying bricks in our building of In the Image Clothing Company, okay? And I'm just gonna keep making content as I do. I'm just gonna keep going, bro. Keep laying my bricks. Keep making episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Keep making videos on the other sides of the company. Yeah, we're gonna just keep going, okay? In the Image Clothing Company and Evan Strong are one, okay? An episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, okay? That's one of the titles. But here's the thing. We are the same. When I say this, from the beginning to the end, and because I say it with clothing too. Clothing needs to sit in the same location for, all the people I say, just meaning everybody. And one of those things that I say to encapsulate all the people is from any time period to ever be. And that really is how it is. And I say this whole thing, how it's like we're just cycling through people every 100 years. If nobody lived over that many years, then each 100 years we have entirely new people on this planet. And these are truths, okay? Yes, it is the same. Generation after generation, we have the same problems. Relational problems, financial problems, economic problems, and all the problems that come up in our lives because we're supposed to struggle, right? Let them struggle is an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast title. But at the same time, we are waiting for God to come again. That's what I'm saying. In Scripture, it's prophesied the last days, okay? The end of days, the year of the Lord's fair. Anyway, there's a lot of time periods that mean certain things, a lot that mean similar things that are, worded in a lot of different ways in Scripture. But this is the big thing, the second coming of Jesus the Christ, our God himself in the flesh. 2025 is the year, okay? And why? Those of you that know, you know. But it's actually 2025 AD, means after the birth of Christ. The Christ child, Jesus the Christ, God in the flesh. So 2025 years ago from today, or, sometime in this year, whenever the actual birthday of God was onto the earth. And this is the whole thing. God is eternal. God didn't ever become. In the beginning was God, and in the end is God, because God is the great I am. But Jesus Christ in the flesh came at 0, okay? 0 AD and 0 BC, before Christ. Okay, that's what this is for the whole earth, because that's the truth of all things, okay? The gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. As I say, that's what we talk about here under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. So, he is coming again, the second coming, okay, to separate Man, we can get all into scripture. I didn't really know how much I was going to talk about this type of stuff here. This is great. Separate the sheep from the goats, in a sense, right? God is our shepherd. Jesus Christ is the perfect shepherd. He knows his sheep. We are his sheep as followers or disciples of Jesus Christ. And then the goats, right? Um, uh, you know, this is the whole thing, right? The wheat and the tares, the separation between the two. There's a lot of metaphor. There's a lot of parables that are both literal and metaphoric at the same time in the gospel of Jesus Christ, in the truth of all things. But really what happens when God comes again is we all get judged for our deeds in this life, okay, what we've done here. And that determines if we live eternally in the presence of God or if we live eternally damned to hell. And that sounds nuts and bold, but everybody gets to live eternally. But really what it is a consequence, in a sense, even on the good end, of what our lives were like in this life here, this probationary state. That's what it's worded as. That's what this life is. Very short. You think about eternity, meaning forever. And then you think about, give or take 80 years maybe of a human life, maybe 100, maybe only 4 years, maybe 3 days, right? People live different ages. But, with all this being said, this earth is just what it is. This life is just what it is. But at the same time, the last days, getting closer to the second coming of God, everything will be crazier. And look around, right? Things are crazy. Things have always been crazy. The world is supposed to be, as we say, as it's worded, it's supposed to be a trial and a test and a place to be lost so that you have to find God. But it's worse in the last days. The closer we get to God coming, the closer he gets to separating those that will really do all that they can to learn how to follow him and those that will, love their sins more. And sometimes I'm loving my sins more than I love God. And is that crazy or what? President Russell M. Nelson, the prophet, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he gave a talk and he talked about, we need to do all that we can to follow Jesus Christ, even when that means giving up our most favorite sins. And I've got some favorite sins. I've got some things that sometimes I crave and I go back to, even though I know it's going to leave me empty each time that I do it, right? And then right after I do it, it's like, man, I knew better, but I still did it, But we're imperfect. We always will be in this life. But we're getting ready for God to come again. And as we do, oh my heavens, right? Earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, tsunamis, lots of craziness, right? Wars. And all these things are prophesied about. Okay, the world will get crazier and crazier and crazier, and God will come and rid the world of its evil. Okay, the righteous will be spared, live eternally with God, and go read your scriptures to know really all of what that will look like and how it will play out. Okay. But these things have been prophesied about, written down for thousands of years, and they're happening. Like, exactly as it was written thousands of years ago. Okay? The truth of all things. The gospel of Jesus Christ is something you cannot deny. If you want to really, really know if it's true, well, you'll find out that it is. No matter what. No matter who you are. Because it is. Because God is. In other words, he's the great I am, like I said. So, it's just the truth. I mean, it lines up. Prophecies and the way that God is depicted and explained in Scripture as Jesus Christ is the point, right? That's how we know God is the example he gave, the only begotten. An episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast where I talked about Jesus Christ being the only begotten Son of our Heavenly Father, or God, the Eternal Father, okay? But there is only one God. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled One God. Welcome. This is kind of a deep dive. So here's the thing. This is where I do that little clock ticky thing, right? I throw a metronome and a beat over the top. I forgot. I forgot the episode title. I mean, I know what I'm talking about as far as the topic, but the episode title, man. Um, Life is different nowadays, okay? But I want to say it like this, we live in a world, as I say, the man-made world placed onto God's earth, and we can see it. Even if you're not spiritual or, meaning like you don't claim to be, everything is spiritual though before it's physical. It just is. Again, it's just the truth. It's like how you can feel things before they happen, or you can have a sense inside of you that somebody's a good person without knowing much about them, or that maybe they're dangerous without knowing much about them. Everything's spiritual before it's physical. That's just how it is. And, we are in the last days, and it says in Scripture, no man knows the hour or the day when the Son of Man, the Son of God, Jesus the Christ, our God in the flesh, will come the second time. Nobody knows. Not a prophet, not an individual, not a certain church, not a group of people or an organization or religion. Nobody knows exactly the day or the hour. But we have a really good idea, and scriptures and prophecies line up, and we're in the last days. That's undisputed. That is something that anybody who's a Christian, meaning a follower, a disciple, a student of Jesus Christ, knows. It's one of those things you couldn't deny. Okay, everybody knows, unless you don't know much of anything about this whole planet we're on, besides outside of maybe you're just one small community, which maybe, right? And it might not look so much like this is the case in your little community, but across the whole globe, it's crazy nowadays, and in a way that it hasn't quite ever been. But nowadays, everything's different, okay? Nowadays, we have things that we never had, okay? We have technologies. We didn't even have the ability to take photographs or pictures, if you will, until just hundreds of years ago from today's date. And then video was even less time, because video is just a bunch of photographs put together quickly, right? FPS means frames per second. Frames is like one photograph. And, you have like 30, 60 frames per second, okay? That's how videos are. That's if you're watching this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast in visual plus audio, instead of just audio only, because it is available in two forms, then what this device is doing is just taking a lot of little photographs. When I say little, I just mean a lot of them, and playing them back really fast, one after another. And that's what a video is. We didn't have these things until very recent. We didn't have cars being mass-produced until about 100 years ago. Okay? Give or take, 120 years, early 1900s, basically, right around there. I don't want to get so particular with dates in this, for any date that I say. If I'm a little bit off with something date-wise in this, as far as things that haven't been around until, and then I say a date, don't like think that I'm trying to be all perfectly not only particular, but even like right about the dates. But, averages, like I'm close on these dates, just giving some context on time periods. Plastic, like I'm saying, it's something that we basically didn't even have. There's plastic in ways, but things weren't made of plastic. Things weren't packaged in plastic. We just didn't have plastic in the ways that we do at all, even 100 years ago from today's date. Man, we live in a generation that has and is changing faster and more than it ever could have possibly before now. It's getting progressively more progressive, if you will, exponentially more exponential. Meaning, picture this. You have two people that tell two other people something. Okay, so now there's four people that know this thing. And each of those four people each tell two more people. And now you go, right? 2, 4, 6, 8. Now you're at 8 people. Okay? And now if those 8 people tell 2 more people, okay, so each time only 2 people from each individual is getting told something. Now if you have 8, and 2 come from each of those 8, now you're up to, what, 16? No. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Yeah, 16. And then you have those 16 people each tell 2 people something. Now you're up to 32. Okay, so each time it gets bigger as it gets bigger. Meaning, the gap gets increasingly larger each time you go up. That's what we call exponential growth. That's how technology is. It's not just like you take 2 and you add 2, and then you add 2, but really you take 2, and then you add 4, and then you add 8, then you add 16, then you add 32, and each time you add, it just is added by a lot more, because it's actually multiplying, not just adding. Okay, anyway, that's exponential growth, and that's what happens with life. Well, physical life, that's what happens when we have our populations get bigger. There's getting increasingly more people on the earth than there ever could have in the past. Okay, the increases weren't as big because there wasn't as many people that was increasing. Technology is getting increasingly quicker the more that it increases. It's an exponential thing, meaning it's multiplying by itself, and that just gets big fast. Okay, if you don't understand how that like math works, that's okay. I'm not so big on math myself, but that's just how that works. And so, we didn't have cell phones until about 20 years ago. Let's say, 25 to 30 years ago, somewhere in the 1990s, about, okay? And then we didn't have touch screens of any kind until, I don't know, right? I don't want to get so particular with dates, but maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we got cell phones with smartphone capabilities. 10 years ago, they improved. 5 years ago, they improved more. And then nowadays, they've improved more than that. Okay, just a, kind of relative timeline. Not exact dates, necessarily. But, they didn't even have the ability to make phone calls at one point, just hundreds of years back. And then, your phone calls, oh man, they were always on a cord, and then they became cordless, but they still had to connect to like something that was, connected to a cord in a way, and they only had a certain distance they could get away from that thing. And you could only call a certain distance across the earth, and now we can make a call to anywhere on the earth and even up to outer space. If there's somebody in a space station, there's ways to communicate. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Because we live in the same place. We live on the same planet, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, anyway, the big thing is not only just in the ways that our parents or their parents or their parents, right? Or their grandparents, just going back as far as you could say that it's different nowadays than, when my parents were a kid. Any generation could say that, but no generation can say it as much as the most current generation. No generation is going to have as big of a gap in the change of any and all things on this earth as the most current generation, because things get exponential, like I was saying, in how big of a gap the change is, how expansive and just transformative the change is. Okay? The most current generation is always the most different from any generation before it. So, we live in a crazy time. Not only do we have cell phones, but we have, I could get into all that I could get into, because there wasn't even television. There was radio. And before there was radio, there wasn't even the ability to play music unless it was live. yeah, and then we got television, and then our televisions went from being corded to wireless, and then now they're in our pockets essentially. And not only was their abilities, to listen to music that wasn't live because you could actually record it, but then it got more portable and more portable and more portable. I mean, we can get into just as deep as whatever with the technology, but that's not the only thing. If you look at stuff like fruit from even just 100 years ago, let's say you go back as far as you can, photograph wise or video wise, documentation of like a watermelon, and you see what they looked like and compare it to our watermelon today, watermelons aren't seedless naturally. For example, that's a good thing that we can understand. Most everybody knows what a watermelon is, the fruit. It's a big, melon. Yeah, they used to look so different. The amount of like red flesh in the watermelon was just kind of separated in there by all the fibrous, more like white, opaque stuff in the watermelon. And there were seeds in it, and it just was a natural growing fruit. And we have altered and modified not just watermelon, okay, but fruits, vegetables, animals, okay, and all these things to such a degree to where they're not anywhere near how they were even a generation ago, okay? But then 2 generations ago, and then 3 generations ago, and 4 generations ago, and each time you go back, exponential changes have happened each generation, okay? So we live in a time nowadays where there's no separation from one side of our earth to the other side. Not only can you just contact them through any kind of means instantaneously, but you can literally see them face to face on a screen, portraying them speak to you. You can audibly hear them. Okay, and to those of us nowadays, you're like, well, yeah, we know this. We just do it, all the time. I've got this person who moved over to this place, part of the way across the globe, and yeah, we just talk as if they're right here. But if we can see this as crazy as it is, as if we were just a generation or 2 back, it's nuts. Okay? So, it's completely different now. Everything. And it's just prophesied to be. Okay? Now, I've said this before. This is one of the main things that allows In The Image Clothing Company to be what we are. Okay? Because there wasn't even as much of a way that you could approach allowing the human body to work each generation back that you went. Like I'm saying, it was exponentially less each generation back that you go, the need to even be intentional about not altering our lives as human beings from their natural state. Yeah. Everything was natural. Everything is natural. There's only natural, as we say, right? The goal is natural for all 4 sides of In The Image Clothing Company. There is no opinion, no say, no belief, no condition, and it will never, ever, ever change. That's what it means for something to be unconditional, okay? That's all there ever is. And ironically enough, a lot of us barely ever see it in modern day. And how does that even make sense? Well, that's what I mean. The man-made world placed onto God's natural earth. And this is the whole thing, is it's exponentially each time that anything could ever be called an improvement or a change or an alteration or whatever you could want to phrase it or word it as, okay? The amount and degree to which that change comes gets exponential each time that it does happen, okay? And some people live in such a state of existence to where they don't even see the ground, the actual earth. They walk on concrete, wood, tile, asphalt, carpet, Okay? Unnatural flooring, just about only. And this is something that wasn't even possible to encounter. Not all that long ago. At all. Okay? It's completely different now. Completely. Okay, so a few things that I talk about and actually haven't for quite some time under In The Image Clothing Company is the open palm. I mean, I talk about it where I do, right? I talk about the need for a radius or a rounding to guitars. The round human hand has been around as long as humans have, and that's what created guitars, yet sometimes we make flat fretboard guitars. It doesn't work for the body. It never could, ever. Literally never. And now here's the thing. We live in a modern man-made world where it's completely different now. We have so many things that are just flat, okay? And I've talked about it. I talk about it where I do, right? Under In The Image Clothing Company. But it's just something you never even could have had to deal with in the past. You never could have had to. Because what we have nowadays is completely different than it ever was. There was the whole industrial revolution, okay? In, the 1900s, okay? Again, don't quote me on all the dates exact, but we started to build machinery, right? We didn't even have cars until that time, mass produced, okay? And so then we've got cars, and then we built factories where we've got assembly lines. And then we've got now robots that make things for us, and we make the robots, okay? It's very, very strange. But, well, it's completely different now, okay? But that's what I mean. There just weren't things in the past that were flat the way that they are nowadays. It didn't happen. You couldn't do it unless you slaved away for so long with a sanding block to get your piece of wood so extremely flat, okay? Or your metal project to be so extremely flat. But again, there was no plastic until give or take 100 years ago, all right? I mean, there was plastic in the ways that there was, but things weren't just like being made from plastic. It was something that got used very specifically for whatever and when it did, right? Polys, okay, polyurethane, petroleum, oil. That's what plastic is. Like I say, it's pretty similar to the same stuff you pour into your car to lubricate the engine, okay? Those bottles of oil that you go to the store and buy, or that they do for you at the mechanic or the auto parts place, or the, whatever. I used to be a lube tech at a couple different car dealerships, actually, changing oil in cars and tires and such things, okay? Kind of like simple maintenance like that. Yeah, this is what our clothing is now made out of. It's completely different now, okay? And so I talk about it, the need for natural materials. And not only just, where we can, but our body should only ever be touching 100% natural materials. And we live in a world now that's completely different, right? Where we've got products that say 99.99999% whatever. Right, it kills 99.999999999, and all of a sudden you're going to sleep with that in your ears. Like, when are they going to be done? Because they're trying to claim that it's like that close to exactly 100% of all the germs will get killed if you use this person's like detergent or soap. And so when we hear the phrase or term or the wording of 100% natural materials, I think a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, that's like, you mean all of it? 100%? And it's like, well, just make the whole thing out of cotton. There you go. Easy. Because that's all clothing was made out of in the past. Linen, silk, other materials as well, right? Skins and hide, which, is skins, but furs, I get it. Things were made out of other materials as well, but all of those things are 100% natural. It's not a hard thing to get to. Just don't make synthetic things, and then there's always and only ever just natural. That's all there is in the first place, and ever is natural. And so that's the funny thing about it, right? We live in a world where we literally think that it's far away the thing that could never leave, is so paradoxical, right? The paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. As God himself, nature, the thing that never leaves, right? If he's unchanging, well then he has to be nature. But if he is the great I am, then he's just everything that's always there. He's unconditional, and so he was here before us human beings because we're conditional, and he'll be after because he's eternal. And everything on this earth was created in the 5 days before human beings, and then we were created on the 6th, and then God rested. Okay, so natural's all there is. Yet, it's completely different now. Okay, because we have so much unnatural at a literally exponential expanse, if you will. I used similar wording earlier, like I don't even know exactly how to phrase it, because you can phrase it however makes it just crazy, meaning gets the point across that it's just so much more than even just the generation before us, and continually getting that way, right? More and more as it gets more. Exponential is that, description of what that is. Okay, so multiplying by itself each time, okay? Now, I think that's how you'd phrase it, but it's what I explained earlier, okay? Here's the thing. Our bodies are only ever something that could work naturally, okay? I say it like that. Natural, neutral, normal, synonyms within the human being. There's a neutral position to every joint. Like the wrist, I show it because it's easy too on video, okay? In every position, there's a neutral to the wrist, okay? And it needs to reside in that. And every joint in the body. I could go over it, but that's what we do on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. I talk about the human body's anatomy in depth, okay? But, we live in just a place where sometimes it's hard to even find nature. And it's just nuts. It's not like, man, we're just saying, yeah, it's just kind of getting a little bit worse here and there. It's, no, progressively just multiplying and multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. Okay? Life has never been like this, and yeah, not even close. Because we can talk to people across the whole earth. I was thinking about this. I was watching a TV show last night. Here's the thing, prisoners of war, POWs as they're often called, that can't even happen anymore. It's completely different now. Nowadays, we have things like drones, okay? Little flying helicopters that can be so very small, can fit in the palm of your hand. You can fly them anywhere that thing could fit into, and it can have a long range to where you can see what it sees when you're not even where it is. Yeah, visual plus audio, right? As I say, of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, one of the ways you can view it. Yeah. That can get directly live fed to you from this little flying camera. Okay, so POWs, though, prisoners of war, in the past, people could hide, people could run, people could do things secretively, and if nobody was actually physically there to see it with their eyeballs, they could get away with it. And that cannot happen anymore. It literally cannot. There's no hiding nowadays. And this is scriptural as well. Again, one of those things, it's we can phrase it like that, prophecies being fulfilled, but not only that, which that is the case, also God is the all-searching eye. And, there's scriptures about nothing hid will ever stay hid. Everything hid comes to the light, right? The truth will set you free. Darkness always overcomes the light. And yeah, right? We're commanded to not gossip. Thou shalt not gossip. Be honest in your dealings with your fellow men. Just be open and transparent, okay? Tell the truth, be a truth teller. All these things just mean don't hide. And nowadays it's actually impossible, in most every case, to hide in ways that you maybe could have in the past, okay? the episode title of what we're calling, at least, 151 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It's completely different now. Now we've got cameras anywhere, everywhere. We've got cameras in everybody's hand nowadays, just about across the whole earth. They've got cameras, okay, in their pockets, on street signs, on corners of buildings, inside of buildings. Like I'm saying, these little flying cameras that can go anywhere that thing can fit. We've got cameras with zoom lenses that can reach miles away from where the camera actually is and get a very, very, very clear photograph or video, okay? We've got satellites that orbit our planet that are constantly filming, recording things, seeing all that's going on. So talk about the all-searching eye, okay? Talk about it being completely different now. Yeah, it's never been like this, and it never could have possibly been labeled as anything that could even possibly be possible to possibly say was even close to thinking it could possibly be anywhere near what it is nowadays. Okay, it's completely different now. So this is what I mean. You know, a lot of what makes In the Image Clothing Company be able to be In the Image Clothing Company is now we've gone from like crazy extreme how the world is really nuts to like stepping it back to things that kind of seem more simple. There wasn't tags in clothing until just decades ago. There wasn't unnatural materials at all. And then they definitely weren't being weaved into clothing, you know, just decades ago. But nowadays, a lot of people's entire wardrobe, all that's on their body is entirely poly, okay? Poly blends, polyester, okay? Petroleum, oil, plastic. Yeah, okay. Pumped from the earth, refined in a factory, heated up, melted down, squozen into little fine strands woven together, placed onto the body. It seeps into the pores, meaning just the holes in our skin where sweat comes from, and our bodies are so damaged, okay? Stretchy things, okay? We can't ever have anything stretchy against the body. It's unnatural. Muscles only contract, okay? Meaning getting shorter. Every muscle in the body, it just shortens, okay? Even if you're pushing, it's just a muscle on the back side of that joint contracting or shortening, which then extends the joint, okay? Every muscle in the human body only can ever get shorter to work and stretch, right? It's completely different now. I don't want to focus so much on that because we talk about that often, and so for this episode, you know, I want to focus on what I need to for this episode is the point. But yeah, it's just completely different now. You know, like I was saying, not only did we not have cars in the past until about, you know, the 1900s, right around the beginning of the century of the 1900s. Not only did we not have them, but that means, you know, we didn't even have the ability to sit down completely stationary that long. Really? I mean, if you're like in a horse and buggy, you know, behind a horse in a little like thing with wheels, and you're sitting there and you've got reins in your hands, like controlling the horse, you know, you're still doing a lot more movement than you would ever be in what we call a car, you know, a motorized vehicle. Yeah. God, that's crazy. Well, here's the thing, you know, it's completely different now. We would never even be able to sit stationary in the past and have anything happen. Because if you were reading a book, well, you at least have to move your arm to turn the page. And you're holding a book physically with both hands. Maybe you're holding it with one hand, but, you know, it's a book. It's a physical thing. It has some flex to it and some movement, even if it's a hardcover book, okay? We have devices nowadays, meaning cell phones, okay? The things I don't talk about all that often, and I'm not afraid to talk about these things. As if it's like some like taboo, like I shouldn't do it. But I just don't put the focus on it because, like I'm saying, it will be completely different before we know it. Really. It just is. It has been, and it just continually will exponentially change as it does, okay? It's just how the world is. But You know, if you were knitting in the past, you'd be sitting semi-stationary with some of your body, but your hands are still doing a lot of movement. Your wrists are moving. Your fingers are doing dexterity, okay, motion, right? Fine motor skills, like I talk about with guitars, like I talk about. You've got rotations happening in your forearms as you're knitting, and in your shoulders. You're moving your body. You know, I'm just thinking about things in the past that you'd be sitting stationary to do before there was any like modern technology. You know that we've only had for about 100 years, and then that I'm talking about like television, and that hasn't even fully been 100 years, as far as I know. I don't think it has. We've had video for longer than that, but well, again, as far as I know, I don't know exact dates. Like I'm saying, don't quote me on like exact dates, but I'm getting close with these things to give context. Um, but yeah, you just couldn't even sit stationary and have anything happen. And so nowadays we have the ability to sit entirely motionless, except for like the tips of our fingers touching our technological devices. Okay, and well, it's even our eyes, and our neck and our head. They sit there stationary, motionless, and our eyes need to move and our head needs to move, and even the musculature on our eyes, like our eyebrows and our cheek muscles, like when you smile, right? There's a video on the main site of In the Image Clothing Company titled The Human Head, and I talk about, like in the video titled The Mechanics of Looking Left, and workouts don't help the nose, workouts don't help the jaw, right? These are some videos on the main site of In the Image Clothing Company where I talk about the human face or the human head and all the mechanics that go into what you can hear right now, right? The movement of the musculature of the mouth, the eyes, the nose, being able to scrunch. And that comes a lot from the open palms and the open arches in our feet. Otherwise, your nose can't scrunch. Scar tissue just gets built up. Oh my gosh. This is crazy. This is what I mean. It's never been like this. Because I could get into as deep as I could get anatomy of the human body wise, things that get affected by our modern man-made world that just never could have in the past. Because we are holding things that are so flat. And like I was saying, and that's one of those things I won't sit on too much in this episode, because we do talk about that a lot where we do. But it just couldn't have ever happened in the past. For some of the reasons as to what I was saying earlier when I was mentioning that in this episode. So, in the Image Clothing Company Podcast, what we're calling for now, and probably is episode 151. Okay, it's completely different now, but this is what I mean. Okay, so the imbalances in clothing, the imbalances in anything though, that come from, because I mean anything. I'm not even talking about just stuff physically placed onto us. I'm talking about anything manufactured, meaning built in life. Even if we're not focusing on the imbalances, but that's one of the huge things that happens through this. But just the way things are made never could have possibly been like this in the past. We didn't have machinery. Everything was made by hand, if it was made at all by mankind. Because how else could it happen? Right? But then we invented robotic machinery. Okay? And somehow these robots are doing this stuff, okay, for us. Manufacturing products and molding things and sewing things. You see what I'm saying? Stuff that just could have never possibly happened in the past. And so we live in a world that's so much more different than any generation ever could have possibly been, okay? And even if you're listening to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast at any time period ever, because as long as these are still in some available form of existing, then they'll be available forever, right? That's what we try to do here under all that we do with In the Image Clothing Company on all four sides is talk about, do, explain, speak on things that will last for literally ever, right? Like the episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast titled The Long Game, and I mention it often. I'm playing the long game. We talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Our God himself, Jesus the Christ, is eternal. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So what I'm trying to do here is make things that don't matter of who you are, of what time period you're in, they'll still apply to you. That's what I try my best to do, and we couldn't do that with every single thing that we ever put out or say or anything. When I say put out, I mean content-wise and product-wise as well. Right. Because we are conditional beings as humans. So no matter how good we as a company, in the Image Clothing Company, did at trying to make everything that we do in all ways that it means for us to do anything here eternal, we wouldn't be able to have that be the case with everything. But we really try. Because of this reason, because the next generation, and wherever you want to actually put the parameters on the generation. I mean, and they have it, right? There's the baby boomers, there's the Gen Z, there's the Gen X, there's the whatever, right? But those are the ones right around this time. There's the millennials. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're all labeled. I think those ones that I just said are actual names of generations. If not, then some of them were, I know. Okay. But this is what I mean, they do calculate it in ways like that, but I just mean as time goes forth, each day, okay, each week, each month, each year, each decade, each century, each millennia, and however many light years you want to buzz away here from here to somewhere else. Toy Story, shout out to Disney Pixar. Yeah, copyright infringement, right? Shoot, dude, I'm trying to give credit where I do. So I do what I do. I am who I am. And one person I am is Evan Strong. That's what I'm going to say. We can get into talking about anything, everything, all things that are different nowadays. And that's just the point, is that things are. I kind of feel like maybe we might run out of storage space, okay? If it cuts, and one of these past few episodes cut. I think it was the one titled, no, I know that it was, if I can remember the title of it, Impermanence. And I think that was the last one, actually, which I'm pretty sure was, darn, see, that's what I don't know. Was it 149 or was it 150? Anyway, Impermanence was the last one that I filmed. And so this is actually the number after whatever that one was. It's 150 or 151, all right? Anyway, the point is, I feel like I kind of need to rush. And so if it does cut, it wasn't me just trying to cut something off. And nor will I ever do that, okay? No. I say blunt, bold, raw, and real. In the Image Clothing Company, we speak on things as they are. I speak bold, harsh truths. I get screaming sometimes, right? Sometimes I'm wrong about things and whatever. Cool. All right. I'm not trying to cut things out is what I'm saying by saying that right now. So if it seems like that's what happened, no. Oh, unless there was like a very specific time when something... Right, I don't know. I'm not perfect, is the point. But I don't cut things out either, just for the sake of like trying to pretend I didn't say something is also the point, okay? So, because I've said some pretty harsh things, by all means, dude. Condemn me for what I have said, because it's been done, right? We're not going to change it no matter what, so... Yeah, no, I've said some pretty harsh things. On In The Image Clothing Company podcast, even. So, that I chose to upload, right? So I get it, right? Yeah, I am who I am. Anyway, it's just never been like this in all the ways. And yeah, it's completely different now. I mean, in a way that's just unreal. You talk to just, yeah. I'm going to wrap it up. I feel prompted to, even if it's not about the storage space, I just feel it's time to wrap this up. Just know I could mention anything that I could possibly come up with to think about, anything that maybe I thought about while I was getting, the ideas and, praying through what this episode would be, as far as the discussion within it. Just, it's so different. It's completely different now Okay, and so that is one of the big points, like I said, but I just want to reiterate it because that really goes along with this episode so much and the content in it. Is that's one of the biggest things that allows In The Image Clothing Company to be what it is nowadays. Because it's not only about clothing, but that's a huge thing because of all that has changed. Okay. But it's about everything that we do. Okay, that's what we do here. And everything that we do, living in a world that's just so different than it was even just, very recent past, is just so different. The ways that we approach it, the ways that we have to approach it, we have no say over because, I mean, society is just what it is, These are the things that actually allows us to be in the Image Clothing Company. These are the things that actually allows us to have phrases like allowing, and then whatever comes after that, right? And really what it is the human body to work, or letting dogs stay natural. It's because things are so unnatural that we are allowed to be a company doing what we do as In The Image Clothing Company. And so it's cool. It gives us a place to where we can be really, really set apart from worldly things, right? Like the scripture, being in the world, but not of the world. That's how we're commanded to be. Be around all the crazy, but don't take part in it. Don't be a part of it. Don't feed into it. And in fact, oppose it. Yeah. So there you go. That's where I'll leave this. Episode 151, maybe? 150, maybe? Whatever it is. One of those two, for sure. I know that much, for sure, about the numbering of this, bro. Of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, okay? Titled, It's Completely Different Now. So, thank you. Stick around for the poodles. Stick around for all that we do. Check out our products if you'd like to. InTheImageClothingCompany.com. Thank you. My name's Evan Strong, okay? I'm here for the long haul, okay? Unless I die before, like, I was planning on it or expecting to. I'm not really planning any certain time. But just meaning we're not distant, right? We've got a lot more of this to come. We're still at the very start of all this. I mean, we're not even a full year into this, and I got the rest of my life doing what we're doing here, now, okay? So thank you. In the Image Clothing Company. Remember it. And not only remember it, but remember that we're not distant, okay? I just kind of said that, but events you can involve yourself in personally, and we do so much through the gift of video. We are centered on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the whole point is come as you are, right? And be completely changed. The whole point is congregate. The whole point is, communion and, yeah, acceptance, even if sometimes people seem a little bit harsh or standoffish, So, we live in a crazy world, man, and we just do. And it's never been as bad as it is, and that can sound scary. And it can be scary, but Jesus Christ is there, and he is God, the one and only true God. The one and only God. The only being that is the higher power, and the Almighty, actually, not just a higher power, but the highest and the holiest. He's perfect, and so thank you.